The story of the Pollock twins and their alleged reincarnation is one of the most extraordinary and compelling cases in the history of reincarnation studies. It involves a set of twins born in the early 1950s who, according to their parents and others, seemed to recall the lives of two young girls who had died tragically in a car accident. What makes this case even more intriguing is the verifiable details that the twins appeared to know, including names, events, and specific characteristics about the deceased girls, details they could not have been exposed to at such a young age. The tragic accident and the birth of the Pollock twins story begins in 1957 in Hexham, a small town in Northumberland, England. The Pollock family, John and Florence Pollock, along with their two daughters, Joanne and Jacqueline, were living an idyllic life until the tragic day that would forever alter their lives. On May 5, 1957, Joanne, who was 9 years old, and Jacqueline, who was 6, were involved in a fatal car accident. They were killed instantly when a car collided with the bicycle they were riding. The grief-stricken parents were left to cope with the devastating loss of their two beloved daughters. A year later, in 1958, Florence Pollock gave birth to twin girls, her second set of daughters, named Gillian and Jennifer. This event would have been a miracle for any parent grieving the loss of their children, but it would soon become an extraordinary and perplexing phenomenon that would captivate the attention of both the public and researchers of paranormal phenomena. What made the birth of the twins so remarkable was not just that they were born into a grieving family, but that, from the very beginning, they began displaying behavior and memories that seemed eerily similar to the deceased girls. The most astonishing aspect of this case was that the twins were able to recall details of the lives of their older sisters, details they should have had no way of knowing. The early signs from the time they were very young, the Pollock twins, Gillian and Jennifer, began exhibiting strange behaviors that seemed to suggest they had knowledge of their deceased sisters' lives. Their parents, especially Florence, were the first to notice this. As babies, the twins would often smile and giggle at nothing in particular, but as they grew older, they started to exhibit what appeared to be memories of the past, memories of their deceased sisters' lives. They began using the names of their older siblings, even though they had never been told about them. They would call out to Joanne and Jacqueline, even though they had no way of knowing those names. The most eerie of these early signs was when the twins started exhibiting specific preferences and habits that matched those of their older sisters. For instance, Jennifer, one of the twins, would often express a strong desire to play with a particular doll that had belonged to Jacqueline, the older daughter who had died. Gillian, on the other hand, would play with toys that Joanne had once favored. The recollections of past lives as the twins grew older and began to speak more clearly. Their recollections of their supposed past lives became even more specific. They started making statements about their previous lives that were uncanny in their accuracy, considering they had no way of knowing about the events they were describing. One of the most notable incidents occurred when the twins began talking about their death. They described in vivid detail the car accident that had claimed their sisters' lives. They spoke about how the car had hit them while they were riding their bicycles, and how they had been thrown to the ground. At the time, they were only 3 years old. Yet, their descriptions seemed to match the details of the accident perfectly, details that had never been told to them. In addition to their memories of the car accident, the twins also began to exhibit behaviors and knowledge that seemed to connect them to their deceased sisters. For example, they would refer to specific family members and events from the past, even though they had never been told about them. Gillian and Jennifer would talk about their old house and the bedroom that they used to sleep in. This, of course, was a house that had been sold after the death of their older sisters, and the twins had never been there. The twins also seemed to have an uncanny ability to identify people who had been associated with their deceased sisters. They would recognize family, friends, or acquaintances from the past, even though they had never met them before. This raised the question of how they could have such knowledge, as the Pollocks had not kept in contact with many people from their past. The investigations as the strange occurrences continued, the Pollock family became increasingly curious and concerned. They eventually sought the help of a researcher named Dr. Ian Stevenson, a well-known psychiatrist and professor of psychiatry at the University of Virginia. Dr. Stevenson had been studying cases of reincarnation and children who appeared to remember past lives for several years, and he had become renowned for his work on the subject. Dr. Stevenson was intrigued by the case of the Pollock twins and agreed to investigate further. Over the course of several years, he conducted numerous interviews with the twins and their parents. He also gathered information from family members, friends, and acquaintances who had known the Pollocks before the accident. The goal was to determine whether the twins' recollections were accurate and whether they could be linked to the lives of the deceased sisters. Dr. Stevenson's investigation revealed numerous details that seemed to support the idea of reincarnation. The twins were able to recall specific names, events, and facts about their older sisters that they could not have known through ordinary means. For instance, they accurately identified the location of their sisters' graves, something they could not have been told at their young age. In addition, the twins exhibited behaviors and habits that seemed to correlate with those of their deceased sisters. Gillian, for example, developed a fear of a particular type of car, something that her older sister Joanne had been terrified of before her death. Jennifer displayed a fear of water, which was consistent with the fact that her sister Jacqueline had drowned in a nearby pond before the accident. Perhaps most striking was the fact that the twins' memories of their past lives seemed to fade over time, as is often the case with children who claim to have past life memories. As the twins grew older, they began to forget the details of their previous lives, and their memories of Joanne and Jacqueline seemed to diminish. This pattern is consistent with what Dr. Stevenson had observed in other cases of reincarnation, where children's memories of their past lives gradually fade as they age. Skeptical explanation. The case of the Pollock twins is a fascinating and mysterious one. It has also attracted skepticism. Critics argue that the twins' memories and behaviors can be explained through more conventional means, such as suggestion, imagination, or even the influence of their parents' grief. Some skeptics suggest that the Pollock twins may have been unconsciously influenced by their parents' desire to find a connection between their deceased daughters and the new twins. After all, the Pollocks were grieving the loss of their two children and may have been highly suggestible when it came to interpreting their twins' behavior. The parents' expectations could have shaped the way they perceived their daughters' actions and statements. Others have suggested that the Pollock twins may have been influenced by stories they had heard about their deceased sisters before they were born. It is possible, critics argue, that the twins' memories of their past lives were simply the result of being told about their sisters in an emotional context, leading them to believe that they were those sisters. Finally, some skeptics have raised questions about the reliability of the information gathered during Dr. Stevenson's investigation. They point out that memory can be highly fallible, especially in young children, and that it is difficult to determine whether the twins' recollections were based on actual past life memories or on the suggestions and beliefs of those around them. The legacy of the Pollock twins case. Despite the skepticism and the many unanswered questions, the case of the Pollock twins remains one of the most compelling examples of what is often called reincarnation or past life memory. The twins' memories, behaviors, and the verifiable details they recalled about their deceased sisters continue to defy easy explanation. For those who believe in reincarnation, The Pollock twins story stands as a powerful example of how the cycle of life may continue beyond death. The legacy of the Pollock twins case also lives on through the work of Dr. Ian Stevenson and other researchers who have investigated similar cases of reincarnation. While the phenomenon of past life memories is still considered controversial, the Pollock twins case has contributed significantly to the ongoing debate about the nature of life, death, and the possibility of reincarnation. In the years since the Pollock twins case was first reported, there have been other cases of children who seem to recall details of past lives, though none have been as thoroughly investigated as the Pollock story. The questions raised by the Pollock twins remain at the heart of the discussion about the nature of consciousness, memory, and the possibility of life after death. Conclusion: the story of the Pollock twins' reincarnation is a remarkable and mysterious case that continues to fascinate people around the world. Whether viewed as evidence of reincarnation or as a psychological phenomenon, the case challenges our understanding of life, death, and the possibility that consciousness might persist beyond the physical body. The Pollock twins' memories of their deceased sisters, their uncanny knowledge of details from their past lives, and the investigation by Dr. Stevenson all contribute to the enduring intrigue of this strange and inexplicable phenomenon. In the end, whether or not one believes in reincarnation, the case of the Pollock twins remains an intriguing reminder of the many mysteries that still lie beyond our current understanding of the human experience.